Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking the literal science of human interaction. We're going to look at exactly what is happening inside our brains when we communicate with each other, especially when the pressure is on. So, if you've ever wanted to truly understand the mechanics of how to communicate better, well, you are in the perfect place.
Tell me if this scenario sounds a little too familiar. You're in a critical meeting, right? A colleague says something that completely undermines your project, and suddenly your heart is racing, your palms are sweating, and you just completely lose your cool. Or hey, maybe you go the other way and just shut down entirely. Why do we do this when it actually matters most? It's a universal pain point in both our personal lives and our workplace dynamics. But the good news here is that understanding the biology behind this reaction is absolutely the very first step to mastering it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with 1. The brain under stress. 2. Empathy and mirror neurons. Next, 3. Think, organize, and choose. Followed by 4. Navigating workplace conflicts. And finally, 5. The DESC assertiveness script.
Section 1. The brain under stress. To truly understand conflict and how to actually resolve it, we can't just look at the surface. We really have to look inside the human brain under the weight of stress. Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast between two very distinct areas of our brain. When stress hits, like that really frustrating comment from your coworker, your amygdala activates first. It flashes like a warning siren. It's the emotional center of the brain, and it triggers that automatic fight, flight, or freeze response. It is pure instinct. But then over on the other side, we have the prefrontal cortex. This is the rational center. It allows for reflection, perspective-taking, and intentional decision-making. But here's the catch. The prefrontal cortex engages much more slowly, and you actually have to practice using it to override the amygdala's automatic hijacking. And this brings us to a really critical distinction. Emotional regulation is absolutely not the same as emotional suppression. A lot of us were told growing up to just calm down or tough it out. But suppressing emotions doesn't just make them magically disappear. It acts like a tight lid on a boiling pot. It increases internal pressure, which leads to physical tension, anxiety, and eventually an explosive outburst or a total shutdown. True regulation isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about creating a manageable space between the feeling you're experiencing right now and the action you are about to take.
Section 2. Empathy and mirror neurons. So let's see how our brains actually bridge the gap between ourselves and our colleagues. How do we literally connect with what someone else is experiencing? Well, the answer lies in the mirror neuron system, or MNS. This is a network of brain cells that activates not only when you perform an action, but also when you simply observe someone else perform it. You know how you wince when you see someone else totally stub their toe? Yeah, that's your MNS at work. It is the literal biological foundation of human empathy.
So the crucial point here is that empathy isn't just some abstract, fluffy, soft skill. No way. It is a hardwired neurological phenomenon. These mirror neurons drive our social interaction and our communication. They build our emotional intelligence, and they allow us to actively understand the mental states of others. They are precisely what allow us to read the room, understand unspoken tension, and naturally adapt our behavior. Section 3. Think, organize, and choose. Knowing how our brain works is fantastic, but how do we actively control it? Let's check out a highly structured framework developed by Mentally Strong to help us harness that rational prefrontal cortex when stress hits. This framework is incredibly actionable. Step 1 is think. You have to bring awareness to the situation. Name what you are feeling and pinpoint the exact trigger. Honestly, just the simple act of naming the emotion actually reduces its intensity in your brain. Step 2 is organize. Ask yourself, is this reaction about this exact moment, or am I bringing in past emotional baggage? Separating the past from the present brings a lot of order to that internal chaos. And finally, step 3 is choose. Now that you've paused, how do you want to respond? You make a calculated, intentional choice that aligns with your personal values, moving you completely out of that automatic reaction.
Now, to get good at this, you actually have to practice it in everyday life. So here are a few simple exercises. First, the 10-second pause. When you're triggered, just pause for 10 seconds before speaking. It literally interrupts those automatic responses. Next up, emotion labeling. Be highly specific here. Say, I feel frustrated or I feel disappointed rather than just I feel bad. And third, body awareness checks. Pay attention to where tension shows up physically in your body because regulation includes your body, not just your thoughts. Practicing these consistently literally strengthens your neural pathways over time. It's like going to the gym, but for your brain.
Section 4. Navigating workplace conflicts. Let's transition from internal regulation into the external reality of interpersonal dynamics and workplace conflicts.
Look, conflict at work is inevitable, right? But instead of just blaming difficult coworkers, we can actually look at objective behavioral data. Research shows interpersonal conflicts usually stem from very specific organizational triggers. Things like differences in goals and priorities, poor communication, role ambiguity where people just aren't sure of their exact responsibilities, competition for scarce resources like budget or time, and natural personality clashes. Identifying these root causes is the absolute first step to resolving them without taking things personally.
And this brilliantly illustrates what we should be aiming for: assertiveness. It sits perfectly right in the middle of a delicate intersection, balancing your needs with the needs of others. Being assertive isn't about steamrolling someone else to get your way. It's about standing up for your own rights in a straightforward manner, while holding equal respect for the rights of the other person. It really is the ultimate professional balancing act.
To clarify this even further, think about the impact of your communication style. If you're passive, you just give in to others' preferences, which means you're totally ignoring your own rights. If you're aggressive, you stand up for your rights, sure, but in an inappropriate way that violates others' rights. Assertiveness is neither of those. It's also not manipulative, and it's definitely not passive-aggressive. Assertive communication relies on straightforward requests that respect everyone's equal rights. It's honest, it's direct, and most importantly, it's fair.
Section 5. The DESC Assertiveness Script. This brings us to the climax of our explainer, a highly effective 4-part framework developed to put all of this assertiveness into practical action.
So, DSC is an acronym you can use in almost any tough situation. First, D stands for describe. You describe the specific behavior completely objectively, just the facts. E stands for express. You express your feelings calmly using I statements. Saying I feel instead of you are is absolutely vital because it prevents the other person from immediately going on the defensive. S is for specify. You ask explicitly for a small, actionable change. And C is for consequences. Specify the positive rewards that will happen if this change is actually made. Let's take a look at how absolutely not to do this. Consider this quote. What's with you? You're so lazy. When are you going to get your work done? Okay, this is a classic poor script. It relies entirely on aggressive character attacks, calling someone lazy, and just vague, panicked demands. From a neuroscience perspective, all this does is immediately trigger the other person's amygdala, throwing them straight into fight-or-flight mode. It guarantees for sure that they are not actually going to listen to you.
Now contrast that mess with this much better script. I feel irritated when I wait on your work. I would like it by Friday. If we meet this deadline, we avoid lateness penalties. This is brilliant, isn't it? It perfectly executes the DESC method. It expresses a feeling with an I statement, objectively describes the behavior of waiting on the work, specifies exactly what needs to change by setting a clear Friday deadline, and then outlines the positive consequence of avoiding penalties. It is calm, it is clear, and it is focused entirely on a mutually beneficial resolution.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the mirror neurons firing in our brains to the exact specific words we choose in an office dispute, ultimately, it all comes down to awareness and practice. So I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you face a conflict, are you going to let your amygdala take over and just react automatically? Or will you take a breath, organize your thoughts, and intentionally choose your response? The power to communicate effectively is literally in your mind. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we continue our journey into focused learning.